Every so often you meet someone in this industry who's done it all and still speaks about contact centers with the same excitement they had on day one. Today's guest, Richard Winterburn, first got a start in a call center back in the 90s, selling telecoms gear across Europe. Fast forward 25 plus years, and he's now a trusted voice in the contact center space, helping organizations of every size, from government departments to Buckingham Palace, transform how they deliver customer and agent experience. As a member of the CCNZ committee, Richard brings a rare blend of hands-on operational experience and deep technical knowledge, from headsets to AI, customer pathway mapping to consulting. He's even a patent holder and a seasoned speaker, passionate about making technology work for people, not the other way around. Originally from Yorkshire and now proudly based in Auckland, Richard has helped deploy solutions everywhere, from small and large enterprises to prisons, and is even the event director of Cornwall Park Run Park. He brings a human-centered lens to everything he does. Welcome to the Kiwi CX Collective, Richard Winterburn.
Thank you very much. Yep, nice to be here.
It's great to have you across here, Richard. And maybe for some of our guests and listeners, can you give a little bit of background about Richard Winterburn so we can fill in some of the gaps?
Try and cover some of the stuff that hasn't been covered already.
Yes.
No, that's I think I fell into telecoms by accident. And you're very kind saying 25 plus years ago. I did the maths just last week, and I think it was, crikey, it's 30 years. Where does it go? Yeah, I think it's 30 years this year,
Wow.
actually. Yeah, mad. But yeah, we just happened to have locally one of the big employers was a contact center that was a distributor, the UK's biggest distributor at the time for telecoms gear. And I had come out of a customer service background. I'd been working in a shop. I ran 4 news agents, and I just loved that. That was my life, and I was working 80 odd hours a week doing that, but it wasn't difficult for me because I loved that customer interaction. And then I moved into intermediate jobs for a little while, and then the big one I remember going into was actually working in this distributor, and it was just great. I mean, I got to talk to people on the phone. I got to see about 300 people every day who worked in the same contact center as me, and it was back in the days when we had green screen stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, actually, they carried on with that for a long time because it was super reliable. But I had a really intensive 6 months. It wasn't actually long I was there, but I had a really intensive 6 months of meeting a lot of people in the industry and learning a lot about technology in the industry. And I soon found out that you can't know everything.
Wow. So let me take you back through that journey. Did I hear you right? You said you were running 4 news agents over a period of time.
Yeah.
So you go from news agents, where you're having face-to-face interaction with people in what is potentially a fast-moving consumer goods type environment, into a contact center space where now the interactions are more remote. Certainly would have been back in the 90s, on a green screen environment, but surrounded by 300 people all trying to do the same thing in some manner or another, like yourself.
Yeah.
What were the key learnings that you took out of that helped you to transition a customer experience that mapped from one industry across into a second?
I think it became quite a lot about trying to make the human interaction that I was having in person as easy as I could, as almost the same as on the phone.
Yes.
And I think I did pretty well at that. The next move I did was actually to go and work for somebody who was one of my customers. So that was a transition that I needed to make, and I wanted to make, because then I went out and actually saw real people. But the actual phone conversation and trying to get that rapport and trying to just create relationships that I've been really good at doing face-to-face in the shops that we had was just another little challenge on the phone, but it was good fun.
So if you then look at that, and then really fascinating to hear this, I think about contact centers, and we often hear that people say, well, I started my career until I got a real job.
That was my first real job. I thought, no.
I know, but it is quite often it is somebody's first real job, and then they just progress and they create
Yeah.
a career. And then you took that career out of being in the contact center, handling inquiries, making calls, etc., into the consulting and design and sales side of things. So when you look at contact centers, they are surrounded by technology that's supposed to be enabling a conversation piece. What have you learned from the interaction side of communication that you've now been able to apply into the design side to make sure that we are creating the best environment both for customers as well as agents?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think what we invested in a huge amount then was a heavy training routine. You know,
Hmm.
as I was saying earlier, we had about 6 months of intensive training, and when you look at that, and we got really good. So we had a huge product range, so we had an awful lot to learn. And now, when you look at the modern contact center market and the technology that's available to them, it's totally different. I mean, we were just breaking into internet then. Email and stuff was fairly new. We were still beeping and sending things via faxes, and orders came through via faxes. So nowadays it's completely different, but the intention is still the same, and the drive towards reducing average handle time is being helped out a lot by those two little letters, AI.
Mm.
And boy, if I had that then, would I have been spending 6 months learning about the technology? Probably not.
So if you then talk about AI, and AI is going to come up in our conversation at some point or another, let's address the elephant in the room. AI is a tool, it's an enabler. What is it about AI that you are seeing that you say, wow, it has already enhanced the customer experience and the agent experience? And if you were to then put a second phase, which is a crystal ball, what's the way you'd love to see it go to that next level?
I was reading some stats on AI just recently, which are kind of interesting. Somebody I saw said, "Oh, 93% of organizations are using AI, of contact centers are using AI." And my experience is that it's just not true. But when you dive into it, then the description of AI is so wide. It can cover anything from an IVR where you're making standard choices of 1 to 3 or 5 or whatever it is, which we were doing
20, 30
30
years
years
ago.
ago.
Yeah.
And that's not AI. I mean, when you get up to a sort of machine learning level, or even better, when we get to agentic, that's the future. Where I see it is in agentic AI, and people. I mean, great. There's about 5 different versions of AI kicking around, but the most important parts are you've got your machine learning type AI, which is a bit like having a train on a track. It can do certain things. It will get you from A to B, but it's got quite restrictive rules around it. And then you've got agentic, which is more of a learning, more humanistic AI, and that's like having a car, and it will get you from A to B, but it will stop off at the sandwich shop on the way, and it might help you pick up your shopping, and it's got more to it, and it's got more access to information, and it can make its own decisions. Tesla's AI piece. So that's where I'd like to see it going. But there was another interesting stat from that,
Yeah.
and that was that humans, what we hear all the time now is humans being wanting to deal with humans. But the statistics from organizations that have put agentic AI in show that something like 63% of people want to deal with agentic AI for most of their interactions.
Wow.
And they'll actually give a higher feedback. You get a better NPS score from agentic AI than you do from agents. But I think it's horses for courses, and you've got to use it in the right place, because there are some fantastic stories about true human, empathic-driven conversations.
And I think that human empathic driven conversations are very, very important. Something that I'd love to maybe even explore further with you. You mentioned training in that first 6 months, really intensive training, and I'm going to guess that's sort of like product-based training.
Oh, yeah.
So if you then look at that and then you add this dimension of AI, which is now saying, hey, if you take a linear path like a train, you've got some elements of it'll get you there quicker, for example. But then if you look at AI, and I just recently came back from a trip around Europe where I was doing planes, trains, and automobiles. Maybe there's a film title in there somewhere.
Should be.
Yeah, should be, absolutely. Showing my age now. But if you look at it and you say to yourself, the airline industry has been using AI a lot to look at maximizing seat capacity and seat sales on airlines. And you'll rarely find an airplane today that has any spare capacity. So you then have this whole situation where AI is being driven over multiple departments and divisions within an organization to try and optimize the maximum return potentially that an organization can give. But then how do the cabin crew that are responsible for that derive an experience if they're disengaged? And I've had that experience coming back from Europe, where I've seen some cabin crews have been absolutely bubbly on fire and others haven't.
This is a drive, in a way, it's a drive, it's a result of the drive to the bottom, isn't it? You've got no space on planes, you're filling as many as seats as you possibly can, and you're trying to service those seats with as few people as you possibly can. That is not an environment. And I think travel is really stressful for people. And there are other places in life where it's stressful. And I don't think that those areas are places that you can cut down on human interaction and true empathy. You can try and emulate empathy with AI, but you can't actually deliver it. And that's just not my opinion. There is I was listening to a podcast from a lady who was a professor at Cambridge University a couple of weeks ago, and she said we're about 10 years away from truly replicating empathy in AI systems. And actually, that's not something I want.
Yeah.
You know, I'm really happy if I get to, if I'm cancelling a service, I don't want to talk to a person about that. They might try to talk me back into that service. Could work, could not. But there'd be a good reason. Maybe I just want to cancel it because I'm from Yorkshire and I've got short hands and long pockets. So I'm happy interacting with an agent or a bot over that. And I'll tell them the truth as well, which I might not actually tell an agent. You know, why are you leaving? Oh. So that data that's captured by AI systems, you know, it's a slight aside to what we're talking about, but it's huge value now. So it's very important to have. But the human part of it does not, you can't remove it from all aspects. And I think your travel thing where people have got babies, there's noise, there's crying, there's stressed people, they've lost their luggage, they don't know what, they want their drink. Yeah, I can't see a bot running up and down the aisles with a little delivery table of coffees and beers.
You know, I was in Kuala Lumpur recently, and I went to a shopping mall and went and had some Japanese food. And sure enough, there was a bot delivering the meals to the table. And you almost feel that there is a disconnect. There's that level of sterility that's in there. Empathy, we've mentioned a number of times already in this conversation. If you take empathy out of the equation, because we aren't yet at that position where AI can be empathetic, I don't think.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
Okay. And then if you add another dimension, I'm going to be particularly contentious here by saying I have seen and observed organizations taking their calls and offshoring them into an environment where culturally we might not be the same as Aotearoa New Zealand, as we would be servicing these calls at a potentially lower economic cost.
Yeah.
What's your take on the ability to look at reducing costs while still maintaining that level of service?
it's it's very hard to do, isn't it? It's very hard to do. It's very hard to get right and match your market, I think. Just because you're offering a level of service that is similar to your market, that your competitors, peers there, doesn't mean you're offering a great and good service, does it? Offshoring, yeah, it'll work for some. It's a bit like AI. It's part of the toolbox that contact centers have got. And
Mhm.
for a country that's fiercely pro Kiwi,
Yeah.
it's always going to be a big challenge, I think, for organizations to offshore. So you've got to choose carefully with
Mhm.
who you go with. And that doesn't mean, of course, that you can't, because there have been successes, but there have been a lot of people who've gone offshore and found it's been a bad experience, not only for their customers, but for them as well.
Mhm.
And then they've brought it back into New Zealand.
So if you then look at the use of technologies alongside people, what technology or product service changes have led to unexpected CX improvements?
Um, Ah, yeah, okay, that's an interesting one, isn't it? What's led to? So I think what people have focused on with AI is the reduction in cost.
Hmm.
We've said AI a lot, haven't we? I know it's a huge thing in the industry. It's what everybody's talking about. So what they focus on it really is a reduction in cost while trying to maintain that customer service level, which works and doesn't work. I was talking to people just the other week. They've had AI in for 3 years, and they're finding that call summarization and transcription and things like that is working really, really well for them. And it's those people, I think, that's one of the first of about 3 or 4 easy to implement AI technologies that really does surface information really well. And so that what they expect to get from summarization is a reduced call handling time and better notes for agents.
Hmm.
But two things. One is the amount of data that's truly held in there is huge. It's much, much more than they were able to get before. And it's much more accessible by BI tools and digging tools. And so you can surface in real time or near real time what conversations are going on in your contact center. And you can put it up in a big screen. You can have word clouds that say, oh, this phrase is being used a lot. Why are things changing in our
Hmm.
contact center? So I think that as a byproduct has been huge for people who've actually implemented and put it. What they found out is quite something else.
So are you observing any other trends, either locally or internationally, that you say, hey, that's something to look out for going forward?
A change I've perceived in the way that manufacturers, the vendors, are coming to the market is much more around that data side
Hmm.
now. It used to be not about that. It was about cutting costs,
Yeah.
and they've worked out that you can't do that. So you need people to drive your systems. You've got to take your knowledgeable people as they are now, and you've got to use them to drive your technology systems. So if your customers want to interact with you in a way that isn't necessarily human
Hmm.
for certain transactions that they want to do with you, then go meet them there. But get your humans to create those journeys because they know what they're talking about. And I think that is the way that the market is leaning now, and the way that the vendors are coming across, because they've worked out that, Forrester said there's a stat around that says something like 80% of AI projects fail.
Yeah.
Not just contact center, that covers quite a bit, but they either fail or they don't achieve the results they're
Mhm.
expecting to achieve. And I think what we'll see is much more humanistic, better researched AI projects coming along.
Well, okay.
That's the trend.
That's a good trend to see, because then I look at this and say to myself, if we are investing in these technologies but they're not delivering, and and you've alluded to this, a multi-channel approach. You've got this sort of channel surfing where people are going to be interacting with you through social media. They're going to be connecting with you via a web platform, for example. Or in the future, they're going to actually interact with you through AI, and AI will be another channel that people will connect into you and
Yeah,
your organization.
pure agentic. Yeah.
What can we do from a technology viewpoint to smooth out and ensure that this, especially in a multi-generational customer base where people prefer technology over human interaction, how do we ensure the best experience? And are we there yet when it comes to technology being able to deliver that?
Yeah, that's a. I should write these down. I'll try not to go off piste with this. All right. So, are we there yet? I started at the wrong end, didn't I? So what can we do? I think we meet with our peers. We meet with people who've done it, tried it, failed, won, and learn from their experiences. Join an organisation like CCNNZ and come to the meetings, listen to what the market's doing. But the truth of it is, it's really, really good if you can get together with people in the industry and share experience. So, that's great. CCNZ facilitates some of that. That's awesome. But other than that, the people I meet in the market, they just all want to get together and talk about their experience. And I think that's fantastic. Your learnings from there. Are we there yet in terms of technology? No. One of the biggest challenges is that no single vendor has got a perfect solution.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a customer, you've got to look at the market and try and pick out. I mean, look, in all fairness, they're not too far apart. And you get some specialists in some areas that don't really cover the whole spectrum of technology a contact center needs, but they'll be really, really good in this area.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll have a bit of competition, and the difference between them is sort of 10%, but you don't know quite what you want from those two people. And then over here, you've got the rest of your contact centers. So finding one vendor that's really good at everything, nigh on impossible.
So is it then easy, or is it getting easier to have multiple vendors and then, shaking your head?
I don't think it is.
Okay.
I think there's a couple of choices. You can get lost for a very long time in picking multiple vendors to perfectly fit what you want to do, or you can find a good partner that you're confident in, that you can have a good, really ongoing relationship with, and that's one of the things our industry is not very good at. Not very good at delivering what they promise on at the start. And I'm sure that a lot of viewers here will recognise this. But people come in, they sell them a solution. It's the best solution on the planet, and then the salespeople end up stepping away a little bit, and it goes into another part of a delivery organisation that doesn't quite turn up right, and doesn't continue to turn up to deliver on their initial promises. And so find a partner, whether it's a vendor that you're dealing with directly, or whether it is a partner that brings together multiple technologies for you. Make sure that they've got that delivery afterwards. Yeah.
I think that's really critical, because it's all very well that you hand over the baton, but you've got to have good instructions with that. You've got to have good support and ongoing activities. So I agree with you. If I look at it, I was recently at a conference, and one of the speakers talked about when things go wrong, and they will go wrong potentially, or inevitably. He said, what you have to do is the 3-phase approach. You have to stop, you have to pause, and then reset. I think we've got to apply that within these technology implementations. We can't expect a project. You mentioned, I think, as many as 80% fail to deliver their ROI, or what they were set out to accomplish, which is a shocking statistic just in its own right.
Yes.
But if we then look at that and say to ourselves, how do we stop, pause, reset? What are the things that you would encourage a contact center leader to do within their environment?
Stop, pause, reset. But I think be tolerant of failure, because we see it more. I mean, the vendors are, I was going to say, helping to drive this, but I think organisations should have a failure tolerant workplace, because if you don't try things, you won't find those stuff that actually you didn't know was going to work for you. So try it, fail early, stop, refresh, redirect.
Yeah.
And utilize, if you're going to do that with your staff, make sure they're well trained, bring them on the journey. If you're putting new technologies in, you absolutely 100% engage with them early, talk to them about it. Don't get them fearing the technology. Don't think that AI is going to replace them, because it's not. It might give them a more fulfilling workplace. They could be surprised. And that's one of the things that's been discovered about summarization of calls. All the agents thought that if we summarize calls, oh, heck, that's a chunk of my job gone. It's 3 minutes off the end of a call that they're not going to need me for. Actually, that's not true. The summarization is a list of hints and tips about the conversation, which the agent might have thought, it's got that right, but it hasn't quite got that right. I can add a bit more information in here. And the agent might think, I've forgotten about that bit. So thanks for the reminder. That's what I use it for. But I've forgotten. I've gone off piste again.
No, it's good, because then if you then explore that opportunity with the agents, the summary of the calls, how easy is it for them to then add that feedback and say, actually, that's right, that's wrong? And are we seeing that now becoming much more intuitive, and the buy-ins coming in from the agents?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, it used to be one of those jobs at the end of a call that was hard work. You do 2 or 3 different clicks, and you when you do your disposition on a call, you might get 2, 3 dispositions. So it might have been a sales call, it might have been a happy call, it might have been something else, But with the capture of the full amount of data and the really fast summarization of it, then you're capturing every disposition you possibly could about that call. So the agent actually knows that that data is valid, it's really useful, and the organization has the benefit of that as well. And the agent can augment it, because the agent's going to be better off at picking up tone. Most of the technologies out there will categorize a call via the words that customers use, but it won't necessarily catch tone and pitch and things like that. So agents are awesome for adding things like that in. Like you said earlier on, empathy, really important in contact centers these days. Very difficult for AI to capture empathy.
So then if you look at the ongoing deployments, we're seeing a lot more happening in the local market being driven, Trans-Tasman especially, from what we're seeing, some great innovations coming in from the US. Let's go back and talk on a topic you briefly mentioned, which was CCNNZ, because we've both been involved in the industry for over 3 decades. 6 decades between the two of us, crikey. You don't get grey hairs without some level of wisdom. If I then asked you, Richard Winterburn, founder of Digicom, but also a contributor and a committee member for CCNNZ, and I gave you a magic wand. Now, this magic wand's got a proviso in here, Richard, and normally it comes with 3 wishes. However, due to inflation, due to the cost of living crisis, we're down to just 2 wishes. Yeah, but if you had 2 wishes to use with this magic wand and associated that with CCNNZ, how would you use those 2 wishes, and what do you wish CCNNZ could do in the industry?
My 2 wishes, just 2?
Just 2.
2 wishes.
For the time being.
I think the real value of CCNNZ is in the people. And I would really love to see the people getting on board with CCNNZ. Let's get more practitioners from the industry involved in creating what could be, but it is already the best organization for contact center in New Zealand, but we want it to be fantastic. We want it to be really owned by the industry, and we want everybody from small and medium contact centers up to the large guys to be involved, because it goes back to the point I was saying earlier on about sharing information. And it's not just about being competitive in your space. It's not just about the banks being competitive against each other. They all want to know what they're doing. But the top end organizations, the technology they're using will filter down into the other ones. And we're bringing New Zealand, we're bringing Aotearoa along with us on the journey here. And that's why we need to share. So that would be, is that one or
That's
two?
the first one.
Oh.
I'll keep that just as one. What's the second?
Crikey. What's the second? I might have to think about that one a bit more. I'm really passionate about that bit. Maybe, of course, free training, free consultancy from people like myself. I don't know. We can't do everything. I wish I could do everything for free, but I'd love to be involved with our members on that side.
Well, we come back to the starting point of this conversation. You talked about your first contact center and the intense training that you were given, and that was a product-based training. Maybe we do need to come back into the industry and ask the practitioners, what do you need? How do we help you? At CCNZ, we have looked at producing a number of certification type programs for agents, for team leaders, for coaches to come in. And we're working with different partners who are experts in those areas of delivery. We're talking about certification for the contact center and auditing. And again, through companies like COPC, we have access to technologies and abilities to drive these things forward. What else do you think you're hearing in the industry that says these are the needs that we as an organization, CCNZ, should be helping to facilitate?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really important. Just what you're talking about with training, and perhaps not a lot of people know that COPC is really accessible and very focused on growth in New Zealand. And as the population here grows and the requirements for contact centers and staff to be really good grows, then I think our people should really be looking at folks like COPC and Learning Planet to pick up on those skills. And COPC will do contact center training for a manager, a team leader, and it's not particularly expensive. It's great value for money. So I definitely advise people to take a look at that. And from the Learning Planet perspective, I think as we see more people coming along with not quite so much time on their hands to do big chunks of training. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking at an agent level or something like that, or even just 15-minute break training, 10-minute break training, then Learning Planet fits that fantastically well.
Absolutely. I think we've all shifted from where we were 30 years ago. The ability to take people off queue, you can't do that and put them into a classroom for extended periods of time. No. So we've got a change in learning and development platforms, philosophies, and drivers forward. Are you getting any evidence from, we talked about empathy before, getting any evidence from conversations you're having about the issues and challenges in what can be perceived as a divisive world out there, where people are now taking their frustrations out on the agents because the technology might not have been working?
Oh, crikey. Yeah, it's not just that, is it? I mean, it's not an easy job being an agent. It's... Yeah, so what I see is people moving, is organizations, contact centers moving away, the good ones, are moving away from doing those old school, how many calls did you make, how many calls do you take, how long did it take you to do that, and looking at the real results of calls, the true outcomes, as we might know it for businesses, but your outcomes for calls as well, and trying to make those positive. And so I know it can be pretty horrific working in a contact center. It can be really stressful. But at the same time, if you allow your people to do great things, those stories get out there. And there is a story that I read just last week, which I thought was fantastic. And I'll name drop quite happily here, but a contact of mine on LinkedIn said that he'd had some issues with he was sick and he had an insurance policy, or somebody in his family was sick, had an insurance policy that came up, and Tower had looked after him and his family, so much so that it was a real life-changing thing for their family. Tower had sent out some flowers to them. The agent was fantastic on the phone, a very personal relationship that they'd kind of built up on the phone. So, and they sent flowers out the next day. And that guy, so those flowers, I don't know, what are they, $50, $100 or something or other? But it meant so much to him that he broadcasted out on his LinkedIn to everybody he knew. And you can't buy marketing, you can't buy goodwill like that. And how many people, if you look through his thread, how many people were saying they were going to move their insurance to the tower?
Yeah.
You know?
So
And-
now, yeah, I love that story. That's
Isn't it?
brilliant example.
Yeah.
So then if you go back and said, what are we measuring? Because what gets measured gets done. We talked about measuring average call handling time or other elements, but what do you need to measure to get good CX?
Some of it's a long-term thing. So CSAT, difficult to capture sometimes. Post-call surveys, I don't have a huge amount of faith in. There's only a certain amount of people will engage in a post-call survey. I've only found the technology works half the time. I tried to do one last week because I get the chance to say what I think, and the guy had done a really good job when I was working for him. I thought, this is good. I'm gonna leave him some positive feedback, and I didn't get the chance to do it. And that could have. He's gone. I was worried. He's gone off the phone. He thinks, I really tried hard with that guy. I got him what he wanted. Where's my positive feedback? But the technology didn't know. Anyway, so I think the scoring across call summaries, fantastic, really good. That'll give you an immediate feel. But you really should be looking at the bigger data. That's almost an old term now, isn't it? But you should be looking at the bigger data of people coming back to you.
Yes.
And maybe it's those social media recommendations that are not prompted. How do you how many things can we find out there on the net of people saying good stuff about us without actually being asked to do it? That is fantastic.
I love that. I think that we've got to really improve that ability to engage and then reiterate that back into the contact center, because if we are monitoring our social platforms, that's where people come on, whether it be Reddit and they're putting some positive or negative comment about you. It's important to identify that and to address it and to look at the recognition back to the agent of what's been happening. A great opportunity I had recently was judging some of the contact center awards in Asia. And one of the applicants talked about how they had inherited through a merger of two financial institutes a shocking experience where customers were really unhappy.
Yeah.
But you've got to come back to how do you support your agents? How do you keep them motivated through these difficult times? How do you acknowledge them and give them a voice at the end of the day to be heard internally?
Yeah, I think it's about having internal platforms. It's about sharing successes and making people proud, or helping people to show that they're proud about the work that they do. Yeah. It really is, and understand your staff, the type of people you've employed and why you've employed those folks. So give them a stage, talk about successes, even if it's a call that you took on and you knew it was going to be a bad call and you had a great outcome from the end of it and the customer was happy. Share them. Yeah. Get it out there once a month. Give them a $50 Prezi card or something or other. It'll make their life. It'll make their month. Yeah.
Absolutely. The smallest things, that doesn't be a huge financial investment, makes a big difference. We're going to be wrapping up the call and the podcast shortly, Richard. But
is that 40 minutes?
I know, look, time just goes before you know it. But I just want to look at one other aspect before we come back and wrap this all up. And I'm really passionate about leadership, as I know you are. So what does good leadership look like for you in the contact center and CX world?
I think it's probably similar in contact center as it is to everywhere else. Within reason, I suppose. And it is about listening to your people and getting them on their journey. Good organizations are truly a team. They don't pay lip service to it. They are truly a team, and they go and they listen. And if they have disagreements, they can talk through it. And it's okay when you come out the other side, even if you continue to disagree. It's okay because those people have been given a voice. And I think if you can do that well, then you'll reduce the amount of staff turnover that you have, and that's a huge problem for organizations. And just try and look after your folks. Try and look after your staff. It's it's the core of your business. If you're in a contact center, you've got customers. You need to have staff that are happy. Happy staff sell more stuff.
Fantastic.
Happy customers.
In a moment, I'm just going to ask you to help us with a final thought. But what I've heard us talk about today has started off within a training environment where you've got involved with contact centers, evolved into the aspect of using that experience from a retail, running news agents back from face-to-face into online technologies. And yet the same principle of empathy keeps on flowing through our conversations as we have been chatting away. And the ability for people to get together and share their experiences, either within the organization, giving their agents a voice, or within the industry.
Yeah.
And CCNNZ has potentially a role. And again, we would encourage people who want to come and join us to come and actively participate within the CCNNZ forums. If you were to then look at a takeaway, what is the one or two things as a takeaway you'd like people to have from this episode, Richard?
I think, as we were just saying, bring your staff along in the journey, especially when you're adopting a technology that they might be afraid about. Teamwork. Don't be afraid to try things and fail. Don't hold people. There were some days in some places you were held to account, and it was disastrous if you failed. So people wouldn't try new things, and you've got to try new things nowadays. Also, be aware that I think the customer market out there and the staff market out there has changed immensely over the last 10 years with the way that people and younger people, as they come through and they are being employed and are being our customers, have got a completely different view than it was in the 2000s or so, pilot high, sell it cheap years. It's not like that now. So be very aware of your customers and run things like as CCNNZ, we run group get-togethers and group thinking for our customers, the contact center market out there. Do that for your customers as well. And make sure that they have a community that they can talk about, because they're less likely to leave that community if they've got one. And I guess the last thing that, which is along those lines, and I've tried to do throughout my career, is you get people talking about a win-win. You remember the conversations that people have. You go and sell something, you have a win-win. They're happy with it, you're happy with it. It is not that case in our industry. It is win-win-win.
Yeah.
Because you need to go, as vendors and as consultants like myself, we don't just need to go to the contact center, we need to find out what their customers need.
Yeah.
And so focus on that customer. If you're in our industry, focus on that one. What does it matter to them? Why? And get people along and help them understand.
Fantastic. So Richard, if anybody watching this podcast, listening in, wants to get hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Richard at digicom, digecom.co.nz. Send me an email there and I'll be happy to chat and go through things. I consult on different technologies for different organizations. Sometimes that little 10% difference makes a big difference.
Yes.
And I've got a view that runs right through the organization to your customers and potentially your customers' customers.
Thank you for joining us at the Kiwi CX Collective and the podcast and sharing your ideas and your wisdom. It's been a pleasure hosting you as our guest today.
Thanks very much. It's been great to be here. Yeah, awesome.